Guantanamo Bay. It's going to take longer than we thought to close Guantanamo. The Obama administration is trying to engineer a soft landing, so to speak, for the president's promise to close Guantanamo Bay by January 22nd of 2010, which is just a few months away. Friday morning, White House officials said that some detainees would still be at GITMO after the deadline. So what does that mean? It's not that we're changing the closing date. There's just still going to be people there after the closing date. That's all it means. So Robert Gates, he's the defense secretary, he was a holdover from the Bush administration by Barack Obama. He confirmed to George Stephanopoulos, I believe, that it is going to take a little bit longer. Let's take a listen.
When the president-elect met with his new national security team in Chicago on December 7th, last year, this issue was discussed about closing Guantanamo and executive orders to do that and so on. And the question was, should we set a deadline? Should we pin ourselves down? I actually was one of those who said we should, because I know enough from being around this town that if you don't put a deadline on something, you'll never move the bureaucracy. But I also said, and then if we find we can't get it done by that time, but we have a good plan, then you're in a position to say it's going to take us a little longer, but we are moving in the direction of implementing the policy.
Okay, so Robert Gates saying the plan here is really not that good. Senator Dianne Feinstein was actually asked this key question of where will these detainees go? Where will they go once they leave Guantanamo Bay? And hey, she's from California. She knows a little something about prisons, and we know about the California prison system. Not surprising, maybe. I wasn't particularly surprised that she said they could come to California. These inmates, these detainees rather, could come to California. Let's take a listen.
Congress allow that?
Well, as you know, I'm one that believes very strongly Guantanamo should be closed, and I believe it can be done. I'm also one that's somewhat familiar with prison structure in the United States, and I know that there are maximum security prisons from which no one escapes in the United States, which are isolated from neighborhoods, and no one is going to put these people in anyone's neighborhood, as some have tried to say.
So you'd be okay with having some of these detainees in California?
Yes. In a maximum security prison, I don't worry about it, provided the prison is set up to accommodate it, and I believe we have facilities that are.
So she makes, whether or not you think that you like the idea, the spirit of having these detainees in California, she makes a good point, which is that the United States knows how to incarcerate people. I think that that's abundantly clear. And many would argue that there's incredible overpopulation, and that nonviolent drug offenders, for example, are filling up prisons, especially in California, unnecessarily. And that if we cleared some of them out, we would be able, by decriminalizing certain drug charges, which in Massachusetts, for example, what are considered personal amounts of marijuana, it's now a civil issue. You get a ticket versus a criminal issue. That we know how to incarcerate people. No, there's many prisons with records of 0 escapes, and that it wouldn't be a problem. I can still see why there's going to be plenty of resistance to having these people, these men mostly, I think all, right, in California.
Right, and I don't think it'll be resistance from the politicians, but from the citizens.
Well, I think politicians there will be some resistance. We've already heard some people saying, whoa, wait a second, you're going to bring them to the United States? You're taking these people who are incredibly dangerous, according to those that support keeping Guantanamo open, and you're bringing them to the U.S.? That's not a good idea. John McCain doesn't agree with that, though. He thinks it should be closed, Guantanamo, that is, but he says this is exactly the problem that he predicted. There's no set plan for where they'll go.
Do you still believe that Guantanamo should be closed?
Oh, yeah, but the mistake was that they didn't have a policy as to how to address these very difficult and complex issues. They are more complex than about any that I've ever, the legal side of this, as well as trying to get cooperation from countries to take these people. So the policy should have been formulated and put into effect, and then the announcement.
So I think John McCain is right. There needed to be a better plan here. The announcement to close Guantanamo was a necessary first step, but very closely behind that should have been a very specific plan. And Lewis, we've been asking this question, where will the detainees go, since the announcement. So it's no surprise that now it's an issue that has to be determined, because we're getting closer and closer to that closing date. We knew right away where this would be a question, and it has not yet been answered, at least in a satisfactory way.
Well, where have the ones who have been removed, where have the majority of them gone at this point?
You know, I think that some have been released, which is a problem in and of itself if you believe that they're being held appropriately, which some do not. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what number have been released at this point either. We should look into that.
Well, there's an ultimatum. You can say, well, we can release them, or we can detain them in a maximum security prison in our country.
Right.
I think, the option's clear.
You know that it's going to open up a lot of discussion about, hey, the prisons are already overpopulated. Now we're going to pay for these detainees. Well, the other argument to that is let's actually house the people there that are violent offenders or dangerous to a degree beyond the drug charges that they have. And I know that even if you have someone just trafficking or selling some marijuana at a low level or even just having a large amount, that you can make the connection that where there's drugs, there's guns, there's prostitution, there's gangs, so on and so forth. I get that. But at the same time, there could be those violent connections to many types of crimes. And the line has to be drawn somewhere. I'm not saying let's let all drug dealers out of jail. I'm saying there should be some component. The drug incarceration policy needs to be reviewed. And that could be a much better way to address overpopulation than a couple hundred of detainees that supposedly are very dangerous.
Sure, I think you can take out all the people who had an ounce of marijuana in their car and replace them with suspected terrorists. But in a maximum security prison, would those people who had small amounts of drugs be in there? Probably not.
Yeah, it depends on the state. You're right. Exactly. What's the cutoff for?
I'm not sure. For
these drug charges in California, and I'm not sure. It would be interesting to look at what's the minimum that would get you into one of these prisons in California. Yeah. And it's an interesting nonetheless.
We'll need to look into it.